right. So we'll kick things off. Jim and Mitch, welcome. Jim, why don't you just start things off, tell about yourself, and then Mitch, you go right after.
Sure. I'm Jim Durbin. My company's name is Respondable, and I work with TA departments to be better to their vendors. Maybe that's the best way to do it. I also work with Mitch. My job is fixing internal processes and understanding the data and the integrations. And I've got a reputation as being somewhat good at Indeed campaigns. Mitch?
Sure. I'm Mitch Gerson with the Gerson Agency here in New York. I've been around for a while. This is my 30th year in recruitment marketing and advertising. Had you had told me when I got hired at HOTUS back, you can do the math, I'd still be doing something in recruitment marketing. I would have said you're crazy. But what we do today is radically different from what we used to do back when I started.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome, guys. We're so glad that you're here. So we've got a pretty good turnout. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this is being recorded, and afterwards we'll make this recording available to you all. I do have to edit this webinar, so it'll be maybe like a week or so. We'll get that out. All right, let's get things going. I know we got a lot of things to talk about, so the stage is yours, and I'm going to hop off and let you guys go.
Sure. Well, we put a little slideshow presentation together for you, but the bigger thing to do is if you guys have questions, if you just drop them into the chat or kind of just let us know. We really want this. I mean, everybody says you want it to be interactive, but there's so many different kinds of roles here. There's people that have agencies like Mitch. There's people who work internally. There's the corporate. There's the RPO. There's the staffing. So it helps a lot if you give us a sense of why you're here. And if you have any specific questions, we'll stop and answer them because they're always far more interesting than whatever we came up at the top of our heads. That said, this wonderful slide deck starts with something pretty basic. If we want to kind of go into it, there's a lot of changes that have coming. If you've been watching Mitch and I on LinkedIn and talking to our clients, there's big things that are occurring in the world of Indeed. They are indicative of a larger market. So we're seeing lots of things occurring all at the same time, from AI resumes, from speed, from integrations to budget cuts, layoffs from the high of 2021, new job boards dying like Monster and Career Builder, new ones being born like Boom Band and others. So the question is, it's all hitting us so fast and all at the same time. So as employer branding, we've got a unique challenge. And I think that challenge is most of the time we can't tell, are we in branding? Are we in marketing? Are we in advertising? Are we all the same? Are we required to be judged by all three of those, even though we don't have the budget and the folks? Or are we just doing our creative? Are we just doing EVPs? So again, a broad area. Mitch, you want to kick off kind of the four different things that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, no, sure. And for everyone out there, I know there are some friends out there, so hello to you. Things have gotten complex. And again, I know obviously Indeed is the easiest thing to discuss because it's the biggest job board in the world, literally, but it's not really about Indeed. It's about the changes happening right now that impact how campaigns are run, how they're sponsored, budgets that are being looked at. And at the end of the day, we had been driving down the CPA, cost per application, for the last 10 plus years. And now with AI and the rise of, Jim already referenced it, fake applicants, things have gotten really messy. So you've got Microsoft with Copilot, you've got Google with Gemini, you've got Grok, you've got ChatGPT. I can go on and on. Indeed is going to be introducing some of their AI products this fall. LinkedIn obviously has a lot of Copilot embedded. But what does that mean for the end user? It means potentially more help in real time than we've ever had before. But obviously, the job boards need to make money. It makes perfect sense. And they're looking at how we're sponsoring things, how we're doing things that we've done for the last 10, 15 years that we got really, really good at are now being scrutinized and changed. And again, not a bad thing, but we are knee deep in an evolution right now. So Jim, I know we had talked a little bit about Indeed policy changes. So that's a big discussion, and that we can dig into a little bit, but we're talking about how the jobs get to Indeed, the budgets that are required to sponsor properly on Indeed. And some of those budgets will impact some employers more than others, and we can talk about that. The oversaturation is a real problem. There are websites that any one of us right now could sign up to for $9.99 a month and send out 1,000 resumes, probably a minute at this point. They're creating artificial resumes. There's a whole thing I'm going to be posting tomorrow about fake applicants getting actual jobs and infiltrating companies and selling those internal secrets. That's actually happening right now. Whole nother problem. And then budgets under pressure. So how do you do more with less? The economy, the number of jobs that are out there, there's kind of like, we're not calling it a freeze anymore. Nobody calls it a freeze. It's a pause. It's a freeze. companies are being a lot more careful with how they spend, where they spend it, and why they spend it. And then the brand and candidate experience, in my opinion, that's the big win and probably appeals to most folks here, is ensuring that once that click occurs, people always verify. Everybody here knows what happens, that progression. It used to be they go straight to Google. Now they don't. They're going to ChatGPT. They're doing their own research. You could do a job research on ChatGPT, 2 seconds. It'll create your resume. It'll do all sorts of cool stuff. If you're not playing with that now, you should probably see what your applicants are playing with. Having said that, at the end of the day, if somebody clicks and they see Glassdoor, Indeed, or anything else that is kind of not putting your company in the best light, it's going to bite you. Jim, hopefully that's a good overview. I can go on.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Indeed's Career Scout launched yesterday. So it'd be interesting to see what that does. That's the AI version. The LinkedIn version, of course, is terrible. It doesn't do as much, which is shocking. But the Indeed Career Scout launches, which is going to make a big difference in how it talks to candidates. Brand new set of signals coming, which changes everything as well. The first thing, because this is what Mitch and I are good at. This is what Mitch does day in and day out. And I do about half day and half day out. It's just basically the new advertising. So just a quick note on this chart. This is actually a good lesson for all of us because data is pretty important. We agonized over whether or not to include the chart because we pulled it from ChatGPT 5. And it fits with what we're seeing with across our clients and what we're seeing. But just to be clear, this is not sourced data. At the same time, I've talked to a lot of clients that will literally, I've talked to agencies that will pull something up at a chat or just the AI overview on Google and tell me this is true because they've seen it. Mm-hmm. This could be true. We think it's probably true, but we would never come out and say this is 100% accurate. And people are making a huge problem in that, in the way that they're going out and just believing everything they read on the internet. So in this case, this is probably true, right, Mitch?
Yeah, and the numbers, it's hard to tell. This is
it matches up well with us.
This is aggregated information. This is, again, through ChatGPT 5, which theoretically is the best one. But to your point, Jim, this is kind of what we're seeing, whether or not this visual is very dramatic, showing big gaps. But at the end of the day, there's no question. CPA, and again, it's not consistent. There are some industries that are doing better than others, but cost per application, CPA, is up year over year over year for a number of reasons, mainly because of things like reduction in organic, the increase in just the general cost. So do we want to dig into what that means, Jim, about?
Well, let's cover these four, and then I'll give a couple of warnings because my role really is to strip away things that people say wrong, that and wear nice hats. But why don't you talk through these 4 bullet points, because this is what you're seeing, and you have a better view of course, a broader number of clients.
So, and again, we'll choose Indeed. So Indeed last year implemented a $25 minimum per job spend. Doesn't sound like a lot, but in aggregate, it adds up sometimes 20, 30, 50, 100,000, 200,000 more to advertise what you have today. Now, the reason they've done that is there are a few reasons, is to eliminate junk, which makes sense, and also to theoretically drive a better candidate experience at the end, because jobs are now have a healthy budget. That's what we're being told is a minimum healthy budget per job. There are shades of gray within that, what that all means. But at the end of the day, if you're spending, I'm making up a number, $1,000 for a week, you might need to spend $1,500, $1,800 to sponsor the same number of roles, depending on the types of jobs that you have. If you have a greater set of jobs, you may need to spend significantly more. For companies specifically staffing that swap jobs in and out pretty fast, and the reason you would do that is to try to keep your costs down against clicks, against applications, that sort of thing. And again, this gets a little complex. It's going to cost significantly more if you want to keep up that cadence. So again, Indeed's thought process here, at least it appears to be, is let's eliminate some of the junk and make sure that folks are really advertising what's important. The dispensation data is interesting. And again, companies are now starting, and when I say companies, specifically, we heard this from Indeed. And again, the end result is supposed to be a better end user experience, not the employers necessarily. Theoretically, it'll help them increase their quality, but the folks looking for jobs. So when Indeed understands what's happening on the applicant tracking system, so what that dispensation data means, as far as I understand it, is your applicant tracking system needs to now send your backend information to Indeed to understand how your jobs are performing. So it got X number of clicks, you hired, where are they in the hiring process, that sort of thing. Some companies are leery of sharing that information. I don't know the legality of any of this or the implications of that. But the key thing is that's now something that I want to explain regarding the feeds. So in the past, we would take a feed from a job board, a company's career job site, which would come from the applicant tracking system. We would download an XML feed, which is basically the phone book of all of the jobs. They may or may not be formatted properly. Then we would put them into a bit of software. It might be Recruitix. I'll throw them out there. Hi, Recruitix. And then we would clean it up and then upload them to Indeed and various job boards. The reason that was important was we could control spend, we can control strategy, we had a lot of control as an agency. We also made sure that every job was listed in the way that Indeed wants it to be listed: job title, salary information, that sort of thing. And that's important for a good end user experience at Indeed. What Indeed has changed now, that was kind of like a multi-source feed. So we got one from the ITS, we sent it to, again, I'll use Appcast now, threw it to Appcast. Appcast created their own. We sent that to Indeed. So what Indeed only wants now is to get it directly from the applicant tracking system. That's where it could get messy.
So let me jump in real quick, because there's a couple things people should realize. One is that you guys need to know, many TA leaders don't know that disposition sync's already active. The big four, your Oracle, your Workdays, they're already in there, and that information is being sent over, not just for Indeed, but for Appcast. ZipRecruiter's looking for it. LinkedIn prefers it as well. So the integration of these companies are doing is reaching into this data. This is a problem for some companies. Famously, Marriott came out and said, hey, we're not letting you have this data. A lot of people with clearances or federal government, they're not going to give this information, because think of how dangerous this is. You're giving raw data that says, hey, this person failed a background check after they got an offer. It doesn't have to. That can be sectioned off where they just say this person got an offer in an interview, but you don't know. If you don't know what your disposition sync is doing, you might be running into problems with your own security protocols. So it's definitely something you have to ask of every vendor, every integration, and your HRS team, because a lot of them haven't seen this before. It's just, here's an API, we throw it together, no one thinks about it, and all of a sudden you're on the hook for that data. The other part of it is the process changes. So as Mitch was saying, the whole point of the agency originally was, if you have weird jobs or unclean jobs, or you like to post a job and leave it up for 3 years, an agency can come along and make that job look new. Or if you're doing truckers or travel nurses, you can post jobs in different places and they look new. If it's coming out of your ATS, it means whatever your recruiter or admin team or whoever created that, sometimes managers, that's what goes live. That's going to impact your advertising. Because all advertising has, it's something called for Indeed, it's called a job score. Basically, when you post a job, they want to see how many people click on it. They want to see what happens to those people. Did you respond to them? And they're ranking you based not just on the quality of your job and what people are clicking, but the quality of your integration. And that's where process changes make a big difference. Mm-hmm. So if you are using Indeed correctly and you're on top of it and you're posting your jobs correctly and you have the salary up and you know what you're doing, you're sending better signals, not just to Indeed, but to every vendor, that your jobs are worth clicking on, because ultimately they want people to click on those jobs. Mm-hmm. So it's important you know what's going on, because you're paying more if you have a poor system that's in place. And the problem is all the vendors want to argue about it. It's not our fault, because they're just working. We don't tend to charge for these things. We don't do consulting as much in HR. So definitely we need to know what this means, because we want to watch out for compliance issues and security, but we also want to get better, more candidates that we like, the good ones, at a lower price. And then the final thing is, I know application numbers are up, but at the same time, so are all these bad resumes. And when I say bad, let me be very clear. Some sites out there are just sending you garbage. I've gotten PCS Metro bills and others. There have been issues depending on the quality of the board where you're getting something that's not even a candidate. LinkedIn's got a big issue. We'll show you here in a second about how bad their stuff is because of automation. But even when the candidates are real, so I've got a client, we're getting almost 50% of our candidates aren't fixes. We're paying for them. And they're actually asked questions. These are healthcare jobs. No one's going to ask for a nuclear interventional. I mean, you shouldn't even be applying for the job. You don't know what it is. They've gone back to that old thing where they'll click on any job just to be part of the company. So the bigger your brand, the better your employment brand, the more likely people are throwing a resume over the fence and hoping you'll do something about it. That is huge, because that means that your costs aren't just rising as we're seeing here. They could be doubling or tripling depending on how many candidates you have. And it means you can't trust your own dashboards. If I have 5,000 candidates coming in and half of them don't have the basic qualifications, well, now really I need to double my price. So this is why it's so important for us to get a hold of this. Not to mention now I don't know how many of you guys have been sued for class action, but lawyers have AI scraping tools that'll look at your salary data.
They're looking forward to this. There's so much happening right now. To your point, Jim, my wife happens to be a corporate litigator. These class action lawsuits are a real thing. And again, HRIS needs to understand what's changed. It's not just about structure. It's not just it's going to cost you a little more. What Indeed is doing is smart. They're forcing folks to adhere to a model that should, for the end user, meaning I'm looking for a job, have a much better experience, be matched up with a job that will actually result in an interview or a hire, that sort of thing, which is, of course, the whole point here. But for the HRIS teams that don't fully understand the implications of these changes and may not have an agency to assist them, throw a plug in for the Gerson agency, but if you don't have somebody guiding HRIS, there's a lot of, they may be looking at the technical issues like, oh, everything's being sent over. We're not sending dispensation data. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. You probably need to look into that. But the biggest problem is, and I'm kind of jumping to the next slide, Jim, I apologize. If your jobs, I've already had this happen in real time. So we have an applicant tracking system that we're following the new directives. We're running the campaigns on Indeed direct through this applicant tracking system. It's working as intended, but some folks have their ATSs set up in a very specific customized way that worked for them, but no longer work for this new scenario. As a result, maybe we're seeing 3 out of 5 jobs get passed through because there are little nuances, like if the salary isn't showing in the right field, if the job title isn't truncated, if there are certain things that aren't adhering to these new models, your jobs can't be sponsored. You can go direct to Indeed and do it if you want to bypass your ATS. I think at scale for any enterprise or middle-sized company, that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, and a note on this too, because a lot of people come out and say that we're anti-Indeed. I actually agree with the direction they're taking because they're desperately trying not to be career builder. I talk to a lot of younger folks. I talk to people at all different stages because I tend to be a lot closer to the actual hire. I'm not just working on the marketing campaigns anymore. I'm working with the TA departments and I'm constantly testing candidates. And there's a sense, especially in the youngest generation, people under the age of 30 at this point, that it's all scams. And that was what killed Career Builder. Now,
That's
it's
right.
not true. It's not true, but you can go through, and here's what's scary about it from an employer brand situation, is that sometimes you'll automate something. There's still people throwing folks into cattle calls. It's so easy to schedule an interview, and half the time, nobody makes that interview on purpose because I can schedule 3 or 4 more. It's called the law of large numbers, and this was something we did years ago with ZipRecruiter and Indeed. We had a big study that showed that people from ZipRecruiter actually stayed longer by 9%. And that was worth over 7 figures to the company we were working with. The problem is they're like, great, go get more people from Zip. That wasn't possible. Zip was already at the max, sitting at about 15% of all of our total roles. But here's the problem. The reason that those people were retained is because Zip didn't have as many jobs. It's just called the law of large numbers. It's basic math that'll tell us this. So the better Indeed gets, especially with automation and solving some problems, the easier it is to not just not show up or get another job, but let's say I'm working for Mitch and he tells me I got to stay 5 minutes late and I don't like that. Well, I can just quit because I literally can go to Indeed and get another job without talking to a human and there's no impact. Doesn't work for forever, of course, but that's kind of where we are. All this focus on speed and automation has trained a generation of job seekers to do whatever they want. Of course, I'll apply for 1,000 jobs. I'll apply for anything. You have to treat me like a prince or princess because I applied. These are huge challenges to us and for anyone working with job boards because no one can fix that behavior. And we keep talking about candidate experience, but it is a dual-sided marketplace. So we've spent years trying to make our job easier. The candidates now starting to do with their AI tools. And the result is, how you like that transition, people? Bam, oversaturation. That is called quality presentation. That's a good way to start. Check this out. This is crazy because we're seeing this, of course. I had a prospect that told me one day that 1 out of every 4 people they get from LinkedIn, they hire. And I said, that's not possible. And they're like, no, really, it's in the data.
Probably using a LinkedIn presentation QBR deck.
Oh my God, I hope. He showed me that in his ATS, the source of hire, it was true. 1 out of every 4 candidates in his ATS was hired when they came from LinkedIn. I said, well, I know what's happening there. You have a recruiter who's cherry picking. And he goes, what? It's like, he's literally what happens is they doesn't put it into your ATS until you've already applied, and he's submitting. So 1 out of 4 submittals, which is a much more reasonable number. And he didn't want to believe it, but the problem is then he signed up for a 3-year agreement, paid a lot, did an integration. Well, now instead of 1 in 4, it's like 1 in 10,000 by LinkedIn's own numbers, because so much garbage coming in because it's so easy to automate those LinkedIn applies that it just floods the zone. So LinkedIn themselves says it's now 11,000 applications a minute and a 99% failure rate. Like 1 in 200 are even correct. Their own data is saying that this is a problem. I'm telling you, I've seen 50% of our paid applicants not hitting the mark, and it's only going to get worse. When you look at something like Career Scout, here's my fear is that Indeed does a lot of stuff through skills matching. Career Scout will say, hey, you're looking at this welder positions. Other people have done it. Maybe it's something you should look at. It's relatively easy for a candidate to add the skill welder. And if that's being put, now I'm getting someone with no welding experience who wants a shot. That's a policy decision that makes it tough. So we've got so many resumes, and this is before the fake stuff. This is before the North Koreans. We've got Chinese folks that are coming up with a Latino name saying they live in Laredo, went to Texas Tech, all to be able to get jobs into software companies. In some cases, 4 out of 5 people you're interviewing aren't real or are fake. That should be terrifying. If you haven't seen that, the question is, are you not catching it? Are you just not in that industry yet? And this tends to be focused on tech and government. Then true. But what happens when people start saying, hey, you know what? I want to be a cardiac care ER nurse. And they just throw the resume up on it. And then they're doing it for them and applying. Now you have so many people, you have to go back and start verifying people. And if it's an automated tool, it's not going to be able to do it because the resumes are fake, the job descriptions are AI written. You're just swamped. So the question is, what do you do about it?
Jim, just a quick note. So I have it scheduled for Friday for LinkedIn. There's a article from Fox 26 out of Houston. I almost said Houston because I'm a New Yorker. Sorry, in Houston. And the interesting thing is deep fake job applicants. So there are recruiters that are trying to overcome some of the AI. So they're actually interviewing people one-on-one the way we're doing now in video. So what's happening is they're using deep fakes to obscure who they really are with essentially a digital mask. Think Mission Impossible style. So recruiters are literally asking people to hold their hand in front of their face, because when you do that, that breaks any face mapping technology. So that's where we're at. So what LinkedIn is doing is they're leaning on Copilot. I'm fortunate in about 2 weeks, we're going to go visit with Microsoft, see how Copilot is going to be more tightly integrated with some of the back-end tools to help avoid some of these problems. And Indeed is trying also to try to avoid all of these problems for the companies paying for these jobs to be posted. It's more a matter of we're in a weird moment. There's a lot, I think we started out saying this earlier, there's been a lot of dramatic change in a very short period of time, probably in a business that isn't super exciting and moves very fast, typically recruitment marketing. There's some innovations here and there, but with watching Monsters being sunset, Career Builder being sunset, I know the brands have been bought and they'll be resurrected in some capacity, but they didn't innovate. And I think Indeed might be staring down that barrel saying, we got to change things fast. We've got to make a better end user experience to make sure we continue to be relevant. I was chatting with a friend of one of my sons who was 16. He didn't even know what Indeed was. Gen Z, obviously, but this is our next generation of job seekers, and they're not too far off, but he had no idea what I was talking about when I referenced Indeed.
Exactly. And their experiences are universally horrible because there's this fear of hiring younger people. That's a huge issue we haven't really thought through. And we can do it this way. You can blame Indeed for making their changes, but what are you going to do?
Exactly.
That's the thing we always see. We see people complaining, and they complain about a cost are going up and what they're being told. The idea of changing it is very, very difficult because those changes have to be processed. And there isn't a magic button anymore. And now there won't ever be one again. AI is going to cause as many problems as it's solved. Yep. But there's ways for us to fix these kind of things. And we'll get into some of those. But let's talk a little bit about where the industry is going in general, some things that we're starting to see. Obviously, you saw the monster was in place. It's all more money, more problems. You got to remember, we came off of budget years. We had so much money. Everybody was flowing at it during the pandemic. Stock prices were up for staffing firms after the initial drop. They were overhiring. They were hiring more recruiters and they were hiring software engineers. The problem is, and a lot of job boards, I don't know if you told me this, Mitch, but I've now heard it 4 times where people are hoping they can go back to 2021. So we have an entire industry thinking that the profits and the easy money they were making when it was still low interest and everything was being printed and everybody had cash and we had loans for the government, they're hoping that just randomly comes back. That was their high watermark, instead of realizing that was a historical anomaly that probably doesn't happen. We didn't need all those.
I will say this, having watched ebbs and flows since the early, I hate to say the early 90s, but it's true, to today, we've seen
the 1990s. Just checking.
Yeah, 1900s, as the kids say. But at the end of the day, we've seen the highs and the lows. What's different is everything can be really tracked. It's very tight. AI, that's the difference. And I know we've referenced it over and over, and AI is kind of ethereal, kind of like scary thing that's impacting talent acquisition, entry level jobs. It is. And I'm sure everybody is at least foundationally aware, but it's really changing how talent acquisition even works, how employment branding works. And, we're talking about a lot of these changes. Most of them are going to be very good for the end user. Again, I'm talking about the applicant. But during this messy transition period, companies have to figure out legal, they have to figure out the HRIS technology behind it. They have to look at their budgets. They have to rethink their very core recruitment marketing strategies if they're going, I'm going to use the old term, if they're going to win the talent war for whatever category they're seeking to hire in. But theoretically, if we can go forward 12 months from now, maybe we're all going to be looking to these changes and saying, thank goodness they occurred, because it's been pretty stagnant. I would say the biggest innovation we've had were things like Recruitix and Appcast and the tools to make this even possible to manage multiple job boards, manage CPA, have an analytics dashboard. That was a pretty big deal, but we seem to be moving, if Indeed is moving away from even potentially accepting those feeds, which hasn't happened yet, it could happen, and you got to now go direct to Indeed through your applicant tracking system, it changes things quite a bit for most companies.
It's a good point about the candidate experience. Ultimately, we expect this to be better for candidates. Right now, it's terrible. We have a couple slides to cover that, but it doesn't matter if you're AI. So it's not confuse your AI projects with AI in general. AI is failing all over the place. The LMs can't do what they're supposed to do, but it's also early days. They're supposed to be toddlers and interns. They're not supposed to be fully functional. And people want to one-shot it and just, oh, here's my easy button, everything's run. Well, that's never going to happen. Things are built slowly, but it doesn't matter if we fix it all on the top level. So your jobs are safe. You're not being replaced by an AI. I can promise you that. But the impact will significantly change what you end up doing. Right now, we're seeing some of this. So those who are dealing with vendors, the whole thing about more money, more problems. I'm a big believer that I can't stand it when people say you have to do less with more. No one would ever ask your IT division or your sales division or anybody to just do less with more. It's a captured mindset from the same. It's like when we turn around, we say things like, how'd you get into recruiting? Oh, I fell into it. Is it a well? Do you need a camera crew? What do you mean you fell into it and you can't get out? You've got to go, I fell into it and love it. And this is the noble thing. We put people to work. So fight back a little bit. Don't let people tell you you're just an expense. So the challenge we have now is we have this issue. We have consolidated vendors. Everybody wanted one check. The problem with one check, oh, I want one throat to choke. Well, you have multiple vendors and multiple entry points, APIs, webhooks, sources. You can't just have one. Someone's got to be involved minding that store. And so what happens when something goes, it's easy for your finance department. It's absolutely terrible for you to be able to do your job. It's hard to add single point solutions because they fail to integrate. I mean, we've seen the number of times where we add something that's kind of cool. It could be a survey data. It could be an interview tool, and then there's a password that's not updated, and all of a sudden your whole system crashes because it was interdependent, it was Frankenstein together, and you don't know which one. So we're terrified of single point solutions. At the same time, the consolidated stuff, we don't know who to yell at when something breaks. Sometimes we just have to change those things around.
It's funny. I had an actual instance where somebody had been laid off years prior, had the global master password to some database that needed an update. And when it broke, we couldn't sponsor anything. It was a staffing company, and it was panic because there was no way to reset it. It was legacy software, that kind of thing. Eventually, they tracked down this poor retiree, and he thankfully actually still had his password probably on the bottom of his keyboard. But to your point, Jim, things used to be really simple. Used to, during the week, somebody would call, place an ad in a newspaper. We'd have to scramble, physically FedEx things. It would run on Sunday. If it didn't do well, hey, rerun it Wednesday, rerun it Monday, whatever the case was. This is now technology. This is no longer simple. There's multiple layers of software and multiple areas of failure points that can occur. And it's not just the software and all of that can fail. There are updates that happen. There are all sorts of weird things that happen on the back end. Think about your phone. I don't know. My phone updated. Now it's trying to block me out of two of my email addresses that I use for work. I don't know why. Nobody seems to know why. Somebody said just reboot. It won't solve the problem. But at the end of the day, if you're not paying attention to these changes, again, many of them will end up probably to be pretty good, but you've got to get your data in order, your ducks in a row, if you will, or none of this is going to work in the next 3 to 6 months for sure. A lot of this hasn't been fully implemented yet. And again, I'm thinking through Indeed. Now is your time to clean stuff up to make sure it's going to work.
And that's where you throw the quick pitch out for my services, the ATS optimization. One quick note for Steve Rothberg, who wanted to know, just so you know, I practice good OPSEC. There's no passwords on the bottom of my keyboard. So I keep them taped to my refrigerator like a man. The other thing, okay, so let's look at the other ones so we get through some of them. AI in the sales process. Jeremy Roberts mentioned this one. It always cracks me up. Every vendor is talking about AI in their sales process, but once they actually sign up, they all deny they have AI in the implementation because your security team's not going to let AI run ragged over different stuffs. We keep hearing AI. It's usually just a wrapper or a small piece. AI first, human first. Make sure you're asking what that really means and you're checking with the appropriate people. You don't want something that runs ragged that you've told, hey, it's going to save us 40%. It turns out you can't even implement it. That happens at a lot of large vendors where they'll sign a contract and they can't do anything for months, which I find fascinating, but I got to learn to write better contracts, Mitch. The other two things you're looking out for are the ranking resumes. Listen, if you're using AI to rank resumes of any kind without a clear audit, without a clear reason as to why is very difficult to achieve, you're getting yourself into trouble. And there's just no question about that. It's not meant to rank resumes the way that people are doing it. Sorting resumes, we can do some of that. We can talk, but it's the language itself. So in the Workday versus Mobley suit, they're not going after the actual tech. They're not talking about what actually happens. You got to remember, this is a judge, not exactly the most tech savvy people in the world. And what the judge is doing is looking at the marketing materials on the website and saying, you're using HiredScore. HiredScore says it sorts and ranks people and makes decisions for you. That's what I'm believing. It doesn't matter if that's not what the tech does. You need to be careful about these people saying, look at all the cool marketing stuff we do, only to find out if it doesn't, because you could be sued for it not working. And then the last thing is the AI screenings. Everybody thinks that even if it does work and it can help you sort through them, or you can just have an AI interview tool talk to all of them. If 99% of them, if only 1 out of every 200 applicants is remotely qualified, why are you spending all of your time? Why are you spending all that time and resources screening them? Instead, you should be looking at different ways to assess intent for people, because you're not going to win that war. They'll always be able to create more resumes than you can sort. Let's talk a little about job seeker, Mitch. I'll take some of this because this is a big thing for me. We, especially for employment brand, our challenge is like, how do you do surveys? I think my favorite was working for a company that made a big announcement that we weren't paying. We had the record year the year before, but they weren't going to pay raises for another 6 months. 3 days later, the survey came out. Oops. We got worse scores, if you can believe it, which throws off our year-over-year trends for going back for forever, because the announcement is something we could control. And if you've written surveys, we have a sense of, oh, it's a survey, it's good. I can manipulate a survey. There's so many easy ways, whether you're using 4 points or 5. Do you start off with something positive? Do you start off with something negative? If you want to tank a speaker, the first thing you ask about is how hot the room is. Was the room a comfortable temperature? If that's your first question, you can tank that speaker's rating up to 3/4 of a star easy. You need to know these kinds of things, because it's not that you shouldn't use survey data, it's that you have to know more about it. And this is one of the biggest problems with most of our reporting is bad data. HR has a lot of bad data. So first example, I was talking to Maka the other day, this morning actually, and they do this AI screen in. So when someone applies, it asks questions and gathers more information. And this is what I found fascinating. Instead of forcing them into an AI, they allowed you to do it by voice, by video, or by chat, or even by questions and text. So by giving people the chance, you have some people who don't want to be on video, some don't want to be on audio. The difference is that data is a heck of a lot cleaner when you say, what do people prefer? Do they prefer AI or a human being? It's a lot cleaner when they have a choice. If I'm saying, hey, Mitch, if you want to work for me, you got to sign up for my Paradox bot and answer the questions. And at the end, I go, how do you feel your experience is with an AI bot? You're going to lie to me because you want the job. If I make you pick which one and then you experience it, then we have different. So how we build this data, and how we report on what's going on with our employee brand is so very important, because there's a lot of fatigue out there, and not just a little touch of nihilism for some of these candidates. If you can go in and audit, it's not enough to sit back and focus on impressions and what it sounds like and what it looks like. Marketing did that 10, 15 years ago. Now it's all about results. So you have to be able to get in there and say, here's the real data so you can make changes. And that starts with truly understanding what the job seeker is going through. And the next one's just more of this. It just talks about what's important. My guess is most of you on here, the big focus is always speed. How fast can you make it? Well, why would you do that? People don't mind taking a long time to fill an application. I'll prove it for you. Hey, Mitch, I've got a job for you. It pays $40 million a year. It requires...
Sold. I'll take it. I'll apply now.
Oh, yeah, listen to the full description before you make the choice.
It's okay. I'll take it.
For an hour a week, you have to listen to people and then come up with an opinion. But it's going to take a 45-minute workday application for you to do it, but you're guaranteed an interview. What do you think?
Yeah.
Of course you're going to do it. It's not the time. It's the worth. They're terrified of being jumped into cattle caught. There's so many scams out there. Something which is really important to us, where they'll sign in and they'll do that hand in front of it, or they'll ask you to walk away from the computer and get a different shirt for the background. And then they're trying to steal. They're literally taking over your computer. Or it's a multi-level marketing thing. There's so much out there that you need to be experiencing. It doesn't matter if you're perfect, if you do a good job, mean well, hire and pay well. If everybody else is having a terrible experience, you're still getting blamed for that. And by you being open and leaving your surveys, that anger is going to come back to you. So we really have to understand job seekers, not just in how they experience our UI and our UX, but how they experience the entire process of looking for a job. And if you can get that into your head and apply that from personas, like I'll go as far as to show every client what it looks like to search, not just for their jobs, but all jobs. And when they see 30 jobs with $20,000 bonuses, their eyes pop. They're like, wow, I didn't realize that's what they're sorting through. And it gives them a much better sense of what a candidate is going through and why they're not clicking on your jobs and why it's not an easy thing, but it takes deep experience with candidate experience and persona to make that happen.
And with all of this technology, it's still, I've never seen the posts I see today on LinkedIn. I've never seen in all the years I'm doing this. And I've been on LinkedIn since pretty much literally since it started. And I'm seeing posts from people saying I applied to 1,000 places. I customized my resumes. I didn't use AI. I had, 3 or 4 interviews. Everybody ghosted me. There's this incredible wave of despair that I'm observing. Who knows? LinkedIn could be just serving me all the bad news because I keep clicking on the bad news. That's definitely a possibility. That's where going back just a moment to the UX UI, the amount of effort. And again, if you're looking for a job, you put in the effort. I get it. When I started this business straight out of college, I sent out physically 100 resumes to the top 100 ad agencies in New York City. And I fell into this recruitment marketing. Who would have thought? It's the old joke. You click on an easy apply, and then all of a sudden you got 45 minutes to an hour and 10 where you're filling out multiple other forms and essentially repeating the same thing, only to get the thank you, we appreciate it, we'll let you know, and then you never hear back. And that is rinse repeat for some folks hundreds or thousands of times per month, and it's very demoralizing. I think, kind of losing my way here a little bit. I'm going to get back to Indeed. Indeed is trying to prevent that. Indeed is trying to create, at least from my observations, again, it's changing the way we've done it for a long time.
Oh, they claim he came out. Remember, so Deco came out and said specifically, it wasn't thousands. He said it's a mistake when a job seeker applies to 20, 30, or 40 positions. That's a bad experience. That's at 20, 30, or 40. He's not talking about 1,000. He goes, that's bad enough. So they see it and agree with you. I mean, they're clear about it. And they're right. It is a bad experience.
And it will be interesting if Indeed, as the leader currently, can drive this change in a meaningful way. And again, we as an agency, we all complain about the changes because it affects how we operate as an agency. Having said that, Indeed's got, they're a public company. They need to make money. They need to have a better end user experience. I'm hoping for folks looking for work, this is the end result, is that things get better, things become easier to navigate, and that you'll have maybe, and I hate to say it, maybe an AI agent working on your behalf to help match you better with jobs moving forward. I guess it all remains to be seen, but getting back to being an employer.
That was almost the perfect segue to the next one.
Oh,
Almost.
well, you know what? Let's go to the next one, because at the end of the day, nobody is trying to charge more. I mean, okay, companies need to make money, but the end result here is to help people get jobs. That's literally, I'm going to
And
obviously.
that's the point of this picture here. Guys, if you guys have seen Moneyball, they're sitting around talking about how somebody looks, if they have a pretty girlfriend, stuff that it's all guessing. And then once they focus on base percentage, he just points. Every time I point at you, what do we for one thing? What is it you should be focused on? It should not be in numbers, time to fill, impressions. No one cares about those. Did the company hire the people it needed to hit its goals? If you can focus on the results and the impressions and putting somebody to work, and you use all of your numbers to focus on that, you're going to have the respect and the negotiating power you need elsewhere. If you're just focusing on your numbers, you're not marketers. We're not marketers. And by the way, marketers don't get to do this anymore either. Multimodal social attribution has been a problem for 20 years. We don't want to get into that because we have an easy thing to focus on. Did you hire the people you needed? How did they do? And that's where, honestly, things like Workday do a really good job of. But he mentioned AI. So the question that, here's some of the myths that we have that we're not going to have. The problem is this AI vision. We're all going to be fully automated. I'm just telling you flat out, that's not going to happen. If it did, we're all gone anyway. It doesn't matter, right? But there will be AI agents. They're not ready yet. Right now, they're just doing small things, but they're like little baby interns. And when you treat them as interns, they get to learn more. But you'll have it both as a job seeker, and then you'll have yours augmenting what you're doing, entering your data for you. Not necessarily screening, not making decisions, certainly not doing a giant loop. In fact, there was a great paper about that. If you have a 95% success rate, which is where the current AIs are sitting, the problem is if you make 2 decisions, you have a pretty good chance of it working. This isn't about hallucinations. This is just basic math. If you try to do a 20-step workflow, and if you've ever built workflows for RPA, you realize 20 is nothing. At a 95% confidence interval, you've only got a 20% chance of getting the right answer, which means AI agents there is no automation that's coming for you anytime soon. It works in demos. The more you do it, the tougher it gets. When you're doing a conversation, if you're doing a conversational AI bot, what people don't get is the cost goes up. So a 3-minute call, that's cheap. That's maybe 15 cents. A 5-minute call with 100 questions, well, that could be $70. So there's a lot of math behind the AI that's not matching up, and these companies are starting to struggle.
That reminds me of, his name has escaped me, Altman from ChatGPT, said literally, please stop saying please and thank you to our chatbots because that costs us $5 or $6 every time you do that.
Wired turns out that was AI created. That was wrong.
Oh, was it? Look at that.
But that's the problem. I fell for it too. I kept telling people the same thing because it's like, oh, because I did.
And I'm usually very careful to verify that. To your point, Jim, that seemed credible.
It's nearly impossible. And that's something else we have to figure out. When you can't tell when people are writing, did they mean it? Was it fake? The deep fakes? I mean, all of this stuff impacts. What happens when your CEO goes out and starts talking about you're about to launch a crypto coin? And if you apply for this job, they'll give you crypto coins. And you didn't even know it was happening. And it goes viral. And all of a sudden, there's big stories about how Pepsi's launching a Pepsi coin if you apply for a job. You don't think that stuff's going on, is going to happen? That type of stuff is scary. The problem is the vision is somehow we're all going to be perfectly augmented cyborgs. We're all going to work 5 to 10 times faster. We're all going to cut costs 30 to 80%. Time to fill is going to fall. That's something Indeed actually says is going to. And they're selling this future, but we know what the future looks like, and it doesn't look like that. It looks a lot closer to this.
By the way, I saw Back to the Future. We were supposed to have flying cars by 2015.
Well, I've seen the way people drive in Dallas, so I'm okay if they're not. I mean, I want one, but I don't think anyone else gets one yet. Here's the reality we're facing. AI layoffs are not here yet. We are laying off for business reasons, for lower interest rates, for instability about the tariffs that are occurring, for global changes like BRICS and the wars in Gaza and the wars in Ukraine. I mean, all that stuff still impacts us. But we were over hiring. We're at a point now where they have waited so long. There's hiring occurring all over that. They're hiring more recruiters and trying to step back in and repeat the same mistakes. But that doesn't help us because now they think they can just replace us with entry-level workers. So either, you have to be some 10x person. I don't necessarily believe that. The bigger issue too is that all these AI tools are showing us how much we're doing that wasn't putting somebody to work. Just because you screened 1,000 people, if none of those people get the job, that's a waste. Mm-hmm. Sure, it's faster, but you're not faster doing your job. You're faster filling out KPIs that you never should have been doing in the first place. Budgets are flat. I don't think that's a lie at all. Budgets are flat, but I do think CFOs are opening up to the chance of spending money, but they want to know why. You have to be clear. So the graph we showed you in the very beginning, we were unsure. The comment that we just heard about whether Sam was saying please or thank you. For all I know, my debunking of it, I might have been the one who's wrong. The story was real, and then an AI created a fake story. Very hard to figure those out. So, but you've got to get clear on your data, which means simplifying what you're doing. What are you doing to get somebody to work? That's the real question. Because the reality is, there's going to be more volume and less results everywhere that I look. Every single client has more coming in, but they're throwing up their hands. If you're a headhunter right now, you're loving life because you have the one thing nobody else does. You call people and talk to them, and you had them in your database. You knew they were real. So they're all doing great. It's just really hard for the internal TA teams. So the question now becomes, what do we end up doing? It's going to wrap up the rest of it. What is it you can do? What are the 4 big things that you can do? And then we'll go at it from there.
Well, you know what? I'm just going to grab fight for budget. I would say, argue with the changes, be prepared, pad your budgets a little bit. The reality is you probably can't fully sponsor things the way you were. Again, it depends on how you were running your campaigns. If you're not familiar with how that's happened or how that goes on, talk to your agency, talk to your Indeed reps. They will help you understand what, you're spending X, you're trying to accomplish Y, here's how much you need to spend. Do you need to spend that amount? I don't know. I think you got to give it a good 30 days to see if it moves the needle. The data piece, I'm going to let you, Jim, grab that because that is really foundationally important, because if your data is not clean, Indeed will not run your jobs. It is very, very simple. And it's a reasonable thing for Indeed to push back on. Diversifying your sources. There's, I don't know, a couple hundred job boards out there. Some of them are niche. I know we've got College Recruiter out there. Hi, Stephen. There are reasons, and very qualified reasons, just the way in the old days I would run in multiple newspapers in the metropolitan area or local newspapers. I'd hit the main paper, I'd hit the community papers, I might even hit some penny savers to ensure distribution and that we're going to reach the right folks. The real tech stack, Jim, I'll also let you grab that. I think that you're better qualified for both of those, the data.
Yeah. And by the way, fight for budget doesn't just mean more. It also means that you can take a look at your spending. If you identify waste, you want a fungible budget so you can apply it to something else. If you can cut a budget 20% or 30%, that's not positive. You want to try it somewhere else. And this is why I say talk the language of finance. If I say I'm 40% more productive, why would Mitch hire somebody else? I mean, it doesn't make any sense for him to do so. So watch out the way we talk about it. When I say fight for budget, speak the language of finance to them. For clean your data, it's pretty simple. It doesn't matter if you're adjusting to Indeed policy changes or you just can't stand your reporting. You're trying to do a better job with people analytics. You're doing workforce planning. All those things are tied in. Your data is bad. It used to be the joke about the AI folks and it was data engineers. Remember, data science was a big thing for a while. Everybody wanted data scientists. The problem is you're paid all this money, but 95% of your time was spent cleaning spreadsheets. So you're doing all this high level stuff in Python and these brand new AI tools that no one ever heard of, but 95% is cleaning spreadsheets. Hey, Mitch, how much time do you spend cleaning spreadsheets for clients? What would you say? One of your people, hands-on people.
A couple hours every
day.
It depends on how often things are being ingested. Once things are cleaned up, generally speaking, we're good. We have to identify what's broken, what needs to be fixed. The issue is things tend to reassert themselves over and over. So it's an ongoing process. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we find. Like I'll start off, I'll spend 40 hours building out campaigns because I'm looking at every single job, every recruiter. Because if you don't.
Are you talking from scratch? I'm thinking maintenance.
Anytime we're doing it, anytime we're working on it. But it's a necessity. It means you have to get in there and ask the questions and you can't make the assumptions that it's just done. You need somebody to go in. And it's probably the real tech stack is the other aspect of it. At a certain point, if you don't like what somebody's doing, whether it's Indeed or it's LinkedIn or social media or your career site, you've got to make your own changes. That means you got to get control of your tech stack. I think the answer, and I think a lot of companies are doing this, like Boom Brand is doing it, Earn Better's doing it, Maca's doing it, Loxo's switching over to it. They're trying to add different ways to talk to candidates, to assess them, to screen them. The question is that your process? If your process is just driving large amounts of traffic, then you're going to have to clean that up. If you want less traffic, you have to deal with the fact that you're doing less traffic. It's understanding what your software does. Does it work the way you intended? Does it still work the way that you intended? And are you willing to change the way that you work to get the best out of it?
I think, and I know we got to wrap up. For those who are not on this webinar paying attention, the ones that are not paying attention, when their jobs are not appearing, when they're getting the wrong applicants, when they're spending money and they're seeing no return, it's because they're not paying attention to things that they need to change. And right now is a inflection point They need to scrutinize their applicant tracking systems, how jobs are being passed over, how that dispensation data may or may not impact them positively or negatively. But at the end of the day, you need to be paying attention. I've had some clients say, this is not a problem yet. We'll worry about it in 6 months. I don't know how that's going to play out in 6 months.
Exactly.
Awesome, guys. I think we're right at 3:00. We've got a few questions here. One from Steven. I don't know if you guys can see in the QA section, but he brings up something about ChatGPT is currently handling 2.5 billion prompts daily, while Google is handling 13.7 billion. So roughly 5 times as many. And then there's a link in there about that. Doesn't it stand to reason that about 5 times as many are using Google to job search?
Well, there's a difference. It's a transactional versus informational. And there's part of the transition. A lot of people have never heard of ChatGPT or Grok or Cloud. They don't even know what you're talking about. Or it's just some vague thing that's out there. So, of course, that information is still going through it. Google is seeing a change, but to some extent, they're seeing more traffic. But it's those Google AI overviews are causing issues. So, yeah, it's not all AI, but AI is now, chat's beginning to add into it. They want the links. They're going to start doing it so they make money when you move over. But you don't tend to ask for transactional stuff. You can ask Grok, hey, what's my best pair of shoes? Which is much different than saying, can you tell me the number of times that Taylor Swift says I in her latest album? There's a huge difference in the intent of what those searches, and that's something we have to understand. If you're paying for a search engine vendor, if you're paying for search engine traffic or the brand new AI traffic, you have to understand what that means, because nobody knows what the correct answer is, because we don't know, are people going to start using these? What's the difference between voice AI and typed? You know, there's a big difference between mobile search and desktop search. Well, now there's voice search straight out of a chat app. So that's basically, that's a whole nother one that's going to take a while to understand.
Jim, I'm going to, just to supplement what you said about ChatGPT. And again, I think people are becoming more aware of this stuff, and Google is just kind of your default. Like, hell, we've all been using Google for 20 plus years, maybe longer. Having said that, for the first time, my wife and I we were away. We were in an area that was touristy. We didn't know our way around other than GPS, of course. And she started Googling restaurants near us. And I'm like, why are you doing that? She's like, so I could find restaurants. And it was, Gemini was doing a decent job at listing some things. But what I said was, let's talk to ChatGPT. And I very conversationally said, hey, my wife and I are here. We're looking for, a nice restaurant on the waterfront. And it spoke to me in a way that sounded conversational and said, hey, that sounds terrific. Sounds like you guys want a nice romantic waterfront restaurant. Here are some great, and it started talking to me. It said, do you want the links? Do you want me to send you to, link up the GPS? That's where we're headed from a candidate experience. For somebody to be able to talk to something, it's just easier. And for it to be able to give you feedback in a holistic, simplistic way, that's the future. That's really where we're headed. We're moving away from, again, I think that's probably, unfortunately, why Career Builder and Monster didn't survive this year. We're moving away from that. I got to search, I got to click, I got to apply, to what skill sets do I need to, apply for these jobs?
Yeah. I was on I had the webinar last week, and there was a company, Tenzo, that actually has the platform you were just talking about. It'll answer questions. And if it doesn't know the answer to the question, it comes up with a pretty good response, kind of defers into such a way that makes it sound like, it doesn't know the question or understand the question. But anyways, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting that you brought that up. We probably are heading that way. All right, we got about, we're a little bit over here. So I want to make a quick announcement before we head out. And I just want to thank everybody. Thank you guys for putting this together and talking about a lot of the changes with Indeed, and especially with the AIs, a lot of stuff that we really need to address right now and not, wait. So I'll make this recording available, and if it's okay, have your presentation available to all those that have signed up. With that being said, I think that's it. We're a little bit over here, and looking forward to kind of keeping this dialogue going, and hopefully have you back on for another webinar sometime down the road.
You know what? These changes are what keeps me interested after 30 years. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and thank you, Jim and Mitch, and we know how to get in touch with you as well. And this has been awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Good to see you,
Have a
Mitch.
great day, guys.
Michael.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching.